Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome back to the IMO webinar in celebration of the Day of the Seafarer. First, let me apologize for the interruption of the program on Wednesday. We had some significant technical difficulties, which unfortunately we could not overcome, but we have figured out what the problem was. We've corrected it. We have our speakers available today, and we are looking forward to a very good panel discussion. When we were interrupted with the technical issues, the Secretary General had already given his address. Unfortunately, he is not able to rejoin us today. He is actively working on some seafarer issues literally as we speak, in an attempt to convince the world to adopt the protocols for crew changes and implement them so that we can continue to bring seafarers home and get them to their ships. I would remind all of some of the things that the Secretary General said in his speech on Wednesday, particularly with respect to the Day of the Seafarer campaign, that the campaign encourages everyone to treat seafarers with the respect and dignity that they deserve so that they can continue to provide their vital services to keep the world economy moving. Seafarers' work is unique and essential. Seafarers are on the front line in this global fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, and they deserve our heartfelt thanks. But they also need and deserve quick and decisive humanitarian action from governments anywhere, not just during this pandemic, but at all times. As I said, we have a distinguished panel of experts and speakers today. So I would like to get right into our speaker panel. And our first speaker will be Guy Platten, who is the Secretary General of the International Chamber of Shipping. And he's held that position since August of 2018. The ICS membership comprises national ship owners associations in Asia, Europe, and the Americas, whose member shipping companies operate over 80% of the world's merchant tonnage. The ICS represents and promotes the views and interests of its member at a variety of fora, including the International Maritime Organization, the International Labor Organization, and many others. Guy has extensive experience in the maritime industry, both at sea and ashore, and is a qualified master mariner. Just before I turn the floor over to Guy, I will ask you that if you do have questions, to the right of your screen, there is a Q&A box. If you want to type your questions there, we will accumulate them and either answer them in writing, or I will bring them up during the Q&A session of the panel later on. Guy, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed, Fred. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. And I know the Secretary General is not here in person this time, but I want to thank him for inviting me to address this special webinar to recognise the Day of the Seafarer. And I want to start by paying tribute to him and to all the Secretariat at IMO for the leadership and commitment shown during this current crisis. At the end of last year, the primary focus of the International Chamber of Shipping, and where I foresaw the industry's priorities would be for this year and over the coming years, was on catalysing the political debate around advancing the decarbonisation of the shipping industry. Just before Christmas, industry submitted a groundbreaking proposal to create a $5 billion research and development fund to bring forward the technologies that will transform our industry. There is no point having an ambitious goal like the one agreed at the IMO to reduce CO2 emissions if you have no way of reaching it. This is a pragmatic yet ambitious proposal in the context of what we see as a fourth propulsion revolution. We also have the continuing threat of violence and piracy being experienced around the world, particularly in the Gulf of Guinea, which has had a traumatic effect on those crews caught up in it. And sadly, that has certainly not gone away during this pandemic, and indeed we are continuing to hear of harrowing incidents involving our seafarers. There is a risk of a rise in trade protectionism and even environmental protectionism, all of which will have unintended consequences when applied to a global industry like shipping. We continually have to remind those on land that shipping is not like other industries, but that other industries cannot survive without shipping. We were also looking at phenomenal advances in technology, especially in the space of digitization. These new advances need well-trained seafarers, which is why we were so pleased that IMO member states agreed to a review of the STCW to ensure these standards remain fit for purpose. However, as we look to the agenda for 2020 and beyond, and little do we all know that in Wuhan in China, something so small was going to have such a fundamental impact on our world, our industry, and of course, our people. On the 1st of January, our industry moved to a new regime of low sulphur fuels. Much work had been done in the preceding year to ensure the smooth implementation of the regulations, and our seafarers were at the heart of making this happen. As we move towards the 1st of March, when the transition period would come to an end, the implications of the COVID-19 outbreak were only just beginning to become apparent. Demand for marine fuel dropped significantly as exports from China dried up. The price differential that many had factored into their decisions to either go the low sulphur route or invest in LNG or exhaust gas cleaning systems was diminishing. Then, with the collapse of discussions amongst OPEC members, we witnessed crude future prices fall to nearly $11 per barrel, where they were around $60 just 6 months previously. In normal times, the oil price fluctuation would have been front and centre of our minds, but we were concerned about a new challenge, concerned about the potential impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on the global economy and to the shipping sector. I remember writing at the beginning of the year to the executive director of the China Shipping Owners Association to express on behalf of the ICS the sincere support and sympathy to the Chinese shipping community. We are stronger together. Since the beginning of this pandemic, ICS has been providing advice to our members and working ever closely with international organisations. Early on, I travelled to Geneva to meet with the World Health Organization. Now, of course, we continue to meet with officials, except it's all on video and how times have changed. It was clear to me that the industry needed to act and needed to act fast. 1 week later, we issued our first guidance document for the shipping industry to help combat the spread of coronavirus. Seafarers were at the front of our minds when doing this, and we produced guidance and even posters to ensure seafarers and ship owners were aware of the most up-to-date information and knowledge. We issued our first press statement as early as March saying the issue of crew changes has arisen due to the coronavirus should be of particular concern to the international community. Further guidance and calls to governments followed, include the development with industry of a 12-step plan, which the IMO has supported and circulated to member states and is freely available on the IMO websites. We have also worked closely with our partners at the International Transport Workers Federation. This industry relies upon our seafarers fundamentally, and I want to use this opportunity to pay tribute to the leadership of Stephen Cotton in this matter. The ITF have been strong partners of ICS, working to find solutions and to support our seafarers and encourage governments and others to take the issue of crew change seriously. What I am so proud about is that the entire sector has been galvanised. We have seen unprecedented levels of cooperation between industry and social partners as we stand behind and stand up for our seafarers. We coordinated a hero shout out on 1st of May with ships sounding their horns in ports around the world, supported by companies and associations in all corners of the globe. For a former seafarer, the sound, which reverberated around the world on video clips and social media, was very emotional. Our members also used the event to invite ministers to be part of the shout out, which provided a hook to elevate the issue of crew change on the political agenda. There's an amazing video of the shout out on our Twitter feed, and even the Irish Navy joined in. However, this is nothing compared to the contribution made by our seafarers. At this very moment, 1.2 million seafarers are on over 55,000 ships across the world, ensuring that the global supply chains remain open and countries are kept supplied with the food, fuel, raw materials and goods that we all rely upon, including the supply of vital medical equipment. This fragile supply chain and global trade is now at threat of logjam due to government inaction and bureaucracy. Seafarers are trapped on board ships, isolated from COVID-19, but also isolated from family and friends. They've missed weddings, they've missed births, they've missed the funerals of close relatives. And every month, during this crisis, every month, 200,000 seafarers alternate, ensuring safe and sustainable working standards. But the bureaucracy and a lack of political leadership has meant that 400,000 seafarers are now stranded, leaving the supply chains we rely upon at critical risk of collapse. In addition, we have heard of many reports of seafarers being denied medical treatment ashore in contravention of international regulations. This is surely completely unacceptable. Seafarers have gone the extra mile, extending their tours of duty, and have kept working to keep us all supplied. The shipping industry has done its homework with things like the 12-step protocols, which I mentioned earlier. Ship owners, ship managers and others have been doing all they can to support the seafarers, but the still seafarers remain trapped. This cannot go on. We cannot take these heroes of global trade for granted anymore. The fact that we are over 3 months down the line and we have 400,000 seafarers in need of crew change is completely unsustainable. They do not represent a risk. Their jobs keep them in quarantine and socially distanced. They are key workers and need to be treated as such within our global economy. Otherwise, it will just grind to a halt. States have a duty to protect human rights that are built on the fundamental obligations of governments. Governments need to waive visa restrictions for seafarers immediately to ensure the smooth flow of global trade. The UK and others have shown this possible, but we must increase this in the scale of action as this is a global issue. Seafarers are key workers. They are essential to shipping, but more importantly, they are essential to the world. We have heard from the UN Secretary General and His Holiness the Pope, but we need all across the industry, no matter who they are, to contact their government representatives to remind them of their duty to our heroes at sea. We are pleased now to be working with the British government on a ministerial summit, which was announced yesterday, and I'm grateful for Minister Tolhurst for her leadership. However, this cannot be a summit that agrees to work hard on the issue. This must be a meeting that delivers solutions for our heroes at sea. To this end, we are encouraging ships across the world to replicate the Heroes at Sea shout out and sound their horns at 12 noon local time to ensure that governments cannot say they have not heard our calls. Government leaders must cut through the bureaucracy, lift the continuing imposition of travel restrictions on these key workers and focus on this issue now. The solutions do not need money. They do not need complicated negotiations. This is simple. The time for leadership is now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Guy. Very well said. Our next speaker is Mr. Stephen Cotton, who is the General Secretary of the International Transport Workers Federation, a global union federation of 665 trade unions representing 20 million workers in 147 countries in the seafaring, port, road, rail, and aviation sectors. He joined the ITF in 1993 as the head of the agreements unit in the maritime section. He was later promoted to the position of Assistant Secretary of the Special Seafarers Department, Secretary of the SSD, and Maritime Coordinator prior to his appointment as Acting General Secretary in October 2012. Steve, it's a pleasure to have you here today, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, Fred, and hello, everybody, and thank you to Keatak Lim and all of his colleagues at the IMO for the opportunity to address you today. I'm going to focus particularly on the seafarer. This day is all about their contribution, and I think it's critical that we recognise the high levels of professionalism, competency, resilience, and above all, sacrifice that seafarers bring to this process. The COVID-19 virus has highlighted that whilst we, the unions, the ship owners, the IMO and the ILO, and the charterers all know how critical shipping is, but unfortunately, the world doesn't. What is particularly sad is that political leaders haven't recognised the invaluable service shipping and the seafarers provide, particularly through this pandemic. They've been denied shore leave. They've been denied potential life-saving medical assistance. And generally, they've been made to feel like second-class citizens. Unfortunately, the global political community has failed them. And we as the industry have been striving day after day to get their call for help heard. In the ITF, we've been responding to our seafarers. We've been providing advice and support giving them assistance, supporting them, the exhausted seafarers, to give them practical guidance about what is possible and what is not possible. Guy mentioned the amazing folks at the IMO. I'd like to add the International Labour Organization as well, who've been working with us to ensure that maritime regulations are respected and implemented. We have lobbied governments, flag states, port states, and the nations from where the majority of the world's seafarers come from, establishing protocols to ensure the safe deployment and repatriation of seafarers. The ITF has a long record of providing funds to support seafarers, and in particular, the ITF Seafarers Trust quickly established a COVID task force with an opportunity to spend £1 million British to provide essential personal protection equipment, support seafarers stuck in hostels, and emergency provisions. This work has been supported and in partnership with the excellent colleagues from Stella Maris, the Mission to Seafarers, and numerous other welfare organisations. We've made 38 grants in over 21 countries all across the globe. We are now looking at what we need to do to indemnify our industry and our seafarers from COVID, as we see this as an ongoing challenge. I want to make special recognition about our social partners, those from the UN and those from the employers. Again, I want to acknowledge Guy and his leadership in the International Chamber of Shipping, and Bilal Ahmed and his whole team in the JNG, the International Bargaining Forum. We have worked day and night to ensure that we're able to implement and deliver the protocols that we've worked on. The World Health Organization, slowly but more progressively as the process came forward, with positions to help us develop the process, and we work tirelessly to implement those protocols. Again, we also want to recognise the work put in place by the United Nations, in particular the Secretary General and his whole team. It's critical that this cooperation continues throughout this pandemic, but beyond as well. We also acknowledge that this has never been seen before. The level of cooperation and the need to support and compromise and deliver solutions. I want to make special reference to the seafarers serving on passenger or cruise ships. The sheer scale of numbers of crew from multiple nations has made it a monumental task to respond to the challenges COVID has thrown up. We have worked closely with many ship owners, cruise operators, to ensure that seafarers are paid their outstanding wages and be safely repatriated. This work is not completed. There are many stranded seafarers, and we will continue to assist them in every way possible to ensure they get home safely. The issue of seafarers' employment agreements. The ITF has taken an extremely responsible approach to the extension of individual seafarers' contracts. At the peak of the pandemic, in consultation with all of our social partners, we agreed to 2 one-month extensions. And then we worked together with our colleagues tirelessly to put these global protocols in place. We gave a further month to extend the opportunity to implement those protocols. Unfortunately, the deadline for that implementation has expired on the 16th of June. It has become clear to us that only a handful of responsible governments have recognised the size and potential scale of the problem we are facing as an industry. And not only as a shipping industry, but the potential impact on the global supply chain. And we have not seen enough governments come through and prioritise the safe movement of seafarers. We have challenged flag states on their processes for extending seafarers' contracts without the express consent of the seafarers. And we continue to receive on a daily basis hundreds of complaints from seafarers expressing their concern at being held potentially under duress well beyond their contractual terms of duty. We believe this situation will continue to impact on their ability to perform safe operation of the ships, putting their lives and their colleagues at risk, and also the ships and the cargoes that they carry. Finally, we recognise that that is an issue for environment, and we call on all of our partners to continue to respond. We recognise that maritime has strong maritime instruments to protect our industry, and these instruments must not be undermined in this time of crisis. We in the ITF respect the law governing shipping, and we expect all of the parties to do the same. Our latest statement calling for seafarers to protect their human rights and to decide whether they wish to accept extensions or otherwise has been criticised in some quarters. We did not take that decision lightly, and it is a message to governments that a solution of just extending time on board is not the answer. The situation for seafarers that we see is one of anxiety, isolation, and fear about when they will be able to return home. We believe this has the potential to push our historical industry into an unacceptable situation where seafarers are forced to enforce labour conditions. This must not be allowed to happen. I'd like to identify the role of governments, particularly those that are participating in the industry and through the body of the IMO. In our view, the responsible ship owners, the UN agencies, our affiliate unions have done everything in their power to help resolve this situation. Unfortunately, this still isn't enough. We share your frustration that the world doesn't value shipping. Throughout this crisis, seafarers, the ship owners have worked day and night to keep supplies moving. Supplies to fight the pandemic, medical equipment to protect lives, personal protection equipment, foodstuffs, all utterly critical at this crucial moment in history. Yet seafarers have been confronted by difficult situations day in, day out. A combination of a clear lack of intent from the countries providing seafarers to the industry to recognise the importance of treating seafarers as key workers who must be allowed to move freely. Restrictions in the port states where seafarers must be allowed to join and leave ships at the beginning and the end of their contracts. It has been a frustrating time and time again for the attempts of the companies who are particularly concerned about their seafarers to effect successful crew changes. We must acknowledge the impact of this uncertainty on the seafarers' families, who are desperate to see their families reunited in many countries that have been stricken by the pandemic. Shipping is truly a global industry, and we need governments to give us global solutions. We in the ITF have been talking to airlines, and they're ready to treat this as a humanitarian situation and reconvene regular flights to move seafarers. We understand and respect governments' right to govern and protect their citizens, but the world needs shipping and the shipping needs seafarers. We are here to recognise the crucial role of seafarers. Let's redouble our efforts. Governments, please stand up for the world's seafarers. Let's cut the bureaucracy. Let's relax the restrictions. Let's agree airlines can schedule flights to move the world's seafarers. Let's ensure that seafarers are not forced through exhaustion to stop the shipping industry. All of the ITF affiliates, those that represent seafarers or all the other transport modes, are committed to do everything in our power to protect the seafarers and ensure the shipping industry can function safely and efficiently. Please, let's ensure that shipping can deliver for the world that needs us more now than ever because of this pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. That was a very powerful intervention. Our next speaker is Paulo Prigol, who is the Stella Maris Asia Regional Coordinator and also the Director and Chaplain of Stella Maris Manila. He's joining us from the Philippines, which I think is quite apt with respect to Day of the Seafarer. Mr. Prigol, the floor is yours. Mr. Prigol, I think your microphone might be muted.
Yes, thanks to all of you, and on behalf of Stella Maris International Network, a welfare service provider, we thank IMO and all of you guys for this opportunity to share a few things on these real issues. Seafarers are key workers, essential to shipping, essential to the world. We join IMO, ITF, ILO, UN, among others, in expressing our gratitude to seafarers. They are key workers, and we would say they are the frontliners of the sea. As the Pope said, they are not forgotten. Seafarers are key workers, and they move the so-called blue economy. But we do like to call the attention of everyone that, as the Pope said, they are the providers for our greater human family. I think without seafarers, we cannot survive, of course, in the shipping industry. The first idea, seafarers are key workers to the blue economy. Much attention has been given to airplanes and crews that are no longer flying as much as before COVID-19. And we are surviving. Ships and crews, key workers as well, never stopped, but the same attention has not been dedicated to them. The question goes, can we survive if the engine of the around 60,000 ships playing the 7 seas goes quiet? Probably no. Some people will say yes. As we are talking right now, and again, thanks for the opportunity on behalf of Stella Maris, they are transporting our basic needs. They are providing for our greater human family. An example, in this land, the Philippines, the unofficial data says that there are approximately 350,000 seafarers. They do remit $6.5 billion a year, at least in the year 2019, or if we wish, 9% of the GDP. Of course, the question is there, will there be massive unemployment? Local statistics will show that yes, there is an unemployment. Second idea, seafarers are key workers to the countries. And in this time of pandemic, between April and May 2020, Stella Maris Manila assisted 1,266 seafarers stranded in Metro Manila. We thank ITF, we thank TK for the support. While distributing food and other basic needs, we asked this question to the seafarers. Are you planning to give up the seafaring career due to the pandemic? Out of the 1,266 respondents, 64 said no, 36 said yes. A number of them said there is no plan B, which means, yes, I want to be a seafarer. For the same period, official numbers show a massive decline on the deployment of Filipino seafarers. As we can see there, this is official data. The decrease was 62.56% compared to the previous year. Of course, the local industry is very confident that the trend will change in the coming months. The third idea is seafarers are key workers for their families. And here is the idea that I think Steve was sharing before. As of the moment, I think I was cut. As of the moment, perhaps the impact of the family is the least noticed or talked about. Of the 30.1 billion cash remittances sent home by Filipino workers overseas in 2019, 22% or $6.5 billion came from the seafarers. Assuming that the deployment in 2019 stood at 350,000, each seafarer remitted to the Philippines an average of $18,571 to the designated LOT. What is the impact of this crisis on the family if the breadwinner is out of job? Or are the seafarers around the world empowered with different skills to engage in a business, thus providing for the family? There is no plan B, said the seafarer. We have some suggestions at the end. The mood around the world in terms of COVID-19, we think it is fear. If we talk about seafarers around the world, the prevailing mode or the perception is stigma and rejection. I think we have heard news from every corner on this issue. Because of COVID-19, are the heroes, at least in the Philippines, they are considered a bit heroes, now perceived as villains? The perception is, before COVID-19, he is a hero. He goes home, he brings a lot of gifts, of course, some money, and everybody is happy. Then comes COVID-19. As Steve said, they sacrifice themselves a lot, and they sacrifice their lives. What we are witnessing now is a negative idea on the person and career of the seafarer. And this is happening, at least this is what we have witnessed in this part of the world, at the family level, the neighborhood level, society level, the government unit level, and the church level. What is the impact of this perception on the seafarer's life and the seafarer's career? How about the impact on the seafarer's family? We do believe that we have to combat this idea that the seafarer becomes the carrier of this COVID-19. Two short-term challenges. Number one, the seafarers. As far as we understand, and we are concerned here, mental health and well-being. And there are 5 main stressors in need of special attention right now: fatigue, anxiety, depression, fake news, and suicide. Families and livelihood. How do we support their families? Stella Maris Manila right now is running an emergency reach out program to 745 families, and we thank ISWAN, ITF for being the major sponsors. We are taking the opportunity to run a survey to find out the impact of this crisis on the family and the main needs of this family. And I hope it's going to be ready by the end of August. Stella Maris Vatican just ran a survey among seafarers, and the financial support ranked as the highest concern. Short-term or long-term challenge. We would like to believe that the maritime charitable institutions, the stakeholders, will keep on funding welfare service providers to enable them, to enable us, to carry on programs and services to seafarers like transportation, communication facilities, especially now psycho-emotional help, COVID-19 preventive measures, personnel, centers, utilities, and so on and so forth. Again, I think it is proper to acknowledge and thank ITF and TK for supporting Stella Maris doing what we mentioned in places like Spain, Italy, Uruguay, Ivory Coast, USA, Australia, and of course here in the Philippines. Thank you, ITF. Thank you, TK.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pregol. Our fourth and final speaker is Mr. Niels van de Minkelis, who is the Maritime Advisor and the Head of Operational Affairs at the Royal Association of Netherlands Shipowners. Niels has a seagoing background and served as a merchant marine officer and as a marine superintendent. And he's going to be talking to us about steps that have been taken to facilitate crew changes in the Netherlands. Mr. van de Minkelis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for allowing the Royal Association of Netherlands Shipowners to speak in this webinar. In this brief presentation, we will highlight what is being done in the Netherlands to help bringing seafarers home amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. What was our starting point? Which steps were taken? Which complexities did we experience? What solution was found? And what is further needed? In January, we started receiving messages from our members about restrictions on crew changes. In February, cruise ships with thousands of passengers and crew on board were denied port entry. In March, it was clear that this situation became detrimental for too many seafarers that need to stay too long on board and are too long away from their families. Something out of the ordinary needed to be done. March was the starting point for us. We asked ourselves the question, what could we do for all the seafarers on board of the ships of Dutch shipowners? They are our membership and primary concern. But also, what could be done in the Netherlands? The Netherlands functions as a multifaceted gateway, large seaports, and a well-connected international airport. A gateway not only for the transport of goods, but also for crew changes. Traditionally, many crew changes take place in the Netherlands. The COVID-19 pandemic should not halt this, to our view. What steps have we taken? We started with a survey among our membership. What nationalities do the seafarers working on board of the ships of our members have? How many seafarers needed to be relieved from May onward? Which seaports would suit for changing crews based on the sailing patterns of the ships? Which airports would suit as hubs between where airlifts may be set up? Based on the outcome of that survey, we concluded that in total 12,000 seafarers needed to be changed. Amsterdam would be the most suitable airport hub close to seaports where most crews could be changed. The ships of Dutch shipowners are manned with mainly seafarers from the Philippines, Ukraine, Russia, Indonesia, and Poland. Therefore, Manila, Jakarta, Kiev, Moscow, and Warsaw would be the most suitable airport hubs in the countries of residence of the seafarers. Our focus should be on the establishment of 5 airlifts between Amsterdam and these 5 countries. We soon realized that setting up an airlift for crew changes is actually a triptych. Part 1, the country of residence of the seafarer. Part 3, the country close by the seaports where the ships call. And in between, Part 2, the flights between those countries. The next step was to reach out to KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines, and to our government in the Netherlands. To KLM, to see if KLM could help us with the logistics, setting up 5 intended airlifts. To the Netherlands government to see if the government could help us with paving the landing strip and the runways, so to say, of these airlifts. A task force was then established in which the Ministry of Infrastructure and Water Management, the Ministry of Justice and Security, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Border Patrol, and thus the Dutch Ship Owners Association participate. Since March, we meet every week to discuss the matters at hand and to find solutions. We soon realized the complexity of the task at hand. Instead of painting a triptych, we found ourselves engineering a system of interlocking gears. What complexities did we experience? National restrictions in the countries of residence of the seafarer. Difficulties for seafarers to travel domestically from their homes to the airport and vice versa. Second, difficulties for seafarers to obtain a visa where and when needed, to be able to travel to, in this case, the Schengen area, as embassies or consulates were and still are closed or only partially operational. And third, restricted access for seafarers to enter their country of residence due to quarantine requirements and limited quarantine facilities. We also had restrictions for KLM to carry out flights, difficulties in obtaining landing rights, limited number of slots granted at airports in the country of residence of the seafarer. And finally, restrictions in the Netherlands. Limited options for obtaining a visa on arrival, strict criteria, and a small number of visa on arrival being issued per day. And second, a narrow time window for crew members who are signing off from a ship calling a seaport in the Netherlands to take a flight home. Nevertheless, with joint forces, the system of interlocking gears could be started turning, slowly but steadily. What have we reached so far? Well, since May this year, in total 6,000 seafarers have been carried by KLM. 4,000 seafarers have been carried between Amsterdam and Manila. 3,000 Filipino seafarers from Manila to Amsterdam. 1,000 Filipino seafarers from Amsterdam to Manila. 1,000 Filipino seafarers will fly next week. And one airplane departed yesterday, on the day of the seafarer. 1,000 Ukrainian seafarers have been carried since May. Multiple dedicated flights for seafarers have been carried out to Jakarta and to the Caribbean islands within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Netherlands and Rotterdam are topping the ranking made by the International Chamber of Shipping of countries and ports where successful crew changes were conducted. Are we there yet? Surely not. Things have been set into motion, slowly but steadily. But the vast majority of seafarers is still waiting to go home and wanting to be relieved by their colleagues. Ship owners, seafarers, seafarer unions, seafarer nations, maritime associations, and maritime nations. We are in this force majeure situation together. Let us do the right thing. Governments, do the right thing, even when that requires to take unprecedented pragmatic measures. We hope that this short presentation has given you a brief insight in how the Royal Association of Netherlands Shipowners, the KLM Royal Dutch Airlines, and the Netherlands government have joined forces to help the unsung heroes of the sea heading home to their families. We owe them. They sail our ships safely. They keep global trade going. Because that is what seafarers do, silently, out of plain sight, with many sacrifices in the past and upcoming months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Niels. Excellent presentation. What I'd like to do now is turn to the Q&A section of this webinar. We've gotten a lot of questions in through the Q&A function. I hope we have time to get to all of them. And quite frankly, we've gotten some good, tough questions, which I think is appropriate given the situation that the world seafarers are in right now. I'd like to start off with one, Steve, this may be directed to you. Guy, you might want to come in. In the current situation, when the world is praising the essential workers, it remains unaware of seafarers. Their contribution, dedication, and sacrifices have gone largely unnoticed. I believe that no one except the ones related to the maritime industry is aware of this industry, its importance, and the terrible human rights violations that are happening at sea. I believe that the impact of the industry and the way it is perceived by the general masses, shipping blindness, played a major role for the current plight of the seafarers. There's hardly any mention about the current seafarers' situation in the mainstream media, accessible to the general population, even when the ITF called for a stop work, a welcome step that could result in a disruption of the global supply chain. But the world remains unaware. With such an approach, how do we expect the governments to take certain immediate steps to classify seafarers as key workers when governments or the general population lack sympathy and remain unaware of the contributions of seafarers? I would say that there has been a noticeable rise in visibility in the mainstream media regarding the situation involving seafarers just in the last 8 to 10 days, notably places like CNN, the BBC, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times. You saw that there was the mention of the statements by the UN Secretary General and the Pope. And certainly a lot of broadcasts and national broadcasts in places like India, Belgium, the Netherlands, they've been running, the United States, they've been running major stories. So Steve, I'd like to ask you to comment on that, and what do you think, what more do you think can be done?
Thanks, Fred. So good questions. I think for us in the ITF, we're looking at all of the options, but I do want to stress that there's been a mixed approach from within our membership. Many of the officers' unions have expressed the desire for the officers to use all of the protocols that we have, collective bargaining agreements, dispute procedures, port state control, all of these issues to bring the issue to a head. And let's be very clear. The objective is not to stop shipping. The objective is to keep the industry going and get those seafarers that are at home on the ships and those that are on the ships back home. So the critical issue for us is to make sure governments understand. And Fred, you captured the point about the media. We have kind of started from a standing position in the media, but we worked, all of us together, to get those media points. We've spoken to ICAO, we've spoken to civil aviation authorities, IATA, all of these players to say, look, governments have to withdraw the restrictions. It was great to hear our colleague from the Netherlands dealing with the same issues, but let's recognize that COVID has destroyed the aviation industry too. We are a global industry. Our workers, the seafarers, are a global labor force and they work around the globe. As we come out of this process, we're going to have to find solutions that ensure such a situation can never happen again. We are working with all of our partners, and I think we have to name some of the countries. We're working with the Philippines. We're working with India. We need more. We need more to help. Yes, it was a crisis that caught us all unawares, but it's utterly critical. Our friend Paolo mentioned the economic impact for these seafarers and their families. It's not just the seafarers and their families, it's the economies of those countries. So those people the governments need to hear us. We're working with the ILO, we're working with the IMO. The UN Secretary General has taken a personal interest in this because they understand this is a humanitarian issue, but it has significant economic impact. On the issue of industrial action, it's the first time ever in my life in the ITF has been encouraged to do more industrial action. And I don't take that lightly. And we are looking at our options. But we still believe that working in partnership, in collaboration with politicians, with governments, that they must recognise this critical issue. And that's our position. We reserve the right to legally take action to defend the seafarers, and we're tackling some of the abuses we've seen mentioned in the flag states right now. But the reality is it's better for us to build a cooperation that helps the seafarers than grind an industry to halt when everybody needs the economic support that shipping provides. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Steve. Guy, would you like to follow up with any comments regarding that?
Thanks, Fred. You know, echo many of those sentiments from Steve. You know, it's not for want of getting the message out there. What we need now is action to take place. We need to get our seafarers home, and it's just reiterate their message. They're key workers, and actually governments have it in their powers to solve this crisis, and it needs to happen right now. And so webinars like this are really useful to get our message across, but actually what we want is to get the message to the politicians who can actually make the difference now. That's got to be our priority as an industry, and to shout even louder and to get them to take notice and to solve this problem. And also something else that Steve said as well, once we do come out of this, and we will come out of this crisis, we've got to make sure this never is allowed to happen again. We've got to make sure that resilience is built in right from the word go, because we don't want a repeat of this. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, Guy, and that actually is a good segue into, we've received a number of questions asking what can the IMO do in the aftermath of the pandemic to make sure that this does not happen again? Is there any regulatory actions that could be taken with respect to amendments to SOLAS or the like? What I would say is the IMO Council is currently in session by correspondence. The impacts of COVID-19 are on the agenda, and it appears that they will make a decision to call for each committee of the IMO to have a COVID-19 related agenda item on their agendas when they're able to meet again, so we can look at exactly the types of things that Steve was just mentioning, and also a number of people asked questions regarding what can we do to prevent this, and what kind of regulatory action can we take. The next question is one that I'm going to combine a question because we've gotten a lot of questions regarding the future of seafaring, which is an excellent question. I would note that we have a number of our IMO Goodwill Maritime ambassadors that are attending this webinar. One of their primary purposes is to attract young people to seafaring. And the question that I have, and I'll ask Niels, I'll ask you to answer this first from the ship owner's perspective, and then Paolo, maybe you from the seafarer's perspective. The difficulties and challenges that seafarers have been experiencing through this pandemic are now the subject of worldwide media attention. What do you think the impact of this will be on the ability to attract the next generation of seafarers, and what can be done to prevent the negative impacts? Niels, would you like to take that one on?
Thank you very much. Yes, in response to that question, we sincerely hope that due to this pandemic, men and women with the aspiration to become a seafarer will not change their minds, and that seafarers, men and women, will not stop sailing. It is difficult to see at this moment, amidst the pandemic, what the impact will be. We can only express our hope that seafarers feel that they're not alone in this, that the ship owners, their employers, and others do whatever they can to bring them home. It are the circumstances that make it complicated. We feel that it is important to express our gratitude towards our seafarers, to salute them. They are heroes, just like the healthcare professionals. Hopefully that will somehow prevent any negative impact.
Okay, thank you. Paula, would you like to respond to that?
Yes, I'd like to say I am very confident, at least in the Philippines, they still want to be seafarers. Before, for technical problem, I failed to show the last slide, but what I gather from the seafarers, the pandemic is really having a mental impact, but we can see, and I agree with our friend from the Netherlands regarding to seafarers leaving at 2, 3, 4 a day, when before it was an average of 20, 30 a day from our centers. So it is in their mind, yes, I will be a seafarer. The next generation, when we go to the maritime schools nationwide, that is one of the highest sought professions in the Philippines. However, that is where perhaps we should look into. Number one, there is too much confusion in terms of certificates, trainings, upgradings, documentation, and so on and so forth. This should all go online, and I think ITF is doing a good job in the Philippines in that line, and some other agencies where the life of the seafarers can be much easier, and they do not have to move always to Manila and be far and away from their families. I am very confident it is not going to be a profession that will disappear, but we have to look into those small details.
Thanks. Guy, I know that the ITF recently commissioned a study on the future of seafaring, or I'm sorry, Steve, the ITF recently commissioned a study on the future of seafaring. What's your view regarding the future of seafaring and the impact of the pandemic?
Well, I think we will have to respond, and I think we have to respond and reassure seafarers that they won't be left in this situation. But I think there's also an opportunity, and I think it's linked to what Guy opened with earlier. The world of work is changing. Employment opportunities for young people, if you look at the ILO studies on the impact, who will be most stressed by this pandemic, it's young workers. So there's an opportunity for us as an industry to have the answers about resilience in respect of quality of life, communications. The ITF is looking at mental well-being studies to make sure that we're there for counselling and support. And I think we need to have a holistic view. And I think this opportunity of collaboration should give us that opportunity to work more and more together, because I think, you know, it's my privilege that one of our biggest seafarers affiliates, two of our biggest seafarer affiliates are from the Philippines. They are critical to the quality of life, not just to the seafarer, but also to their families with medical care, provident plans, and all of these issues we need to explore. As we see the issue of the carbon matter approaching, the ITF is also gravely concerned about how that will impact on the future of shipping, what skills will we need for the future engine room, and we want to be part of a roundtable process that makes sure that we continue to make seafaring an attractive profession. We know that for many of our people, that's because of the US dollar wages and employment opportunity higher than their national average. But we need to work together to reassure them after this period that the ship owners, the good ship owners, and there are some that aren't as good out there, will be responsible, and that we will have a plan for them, a plan that gives them long-term security and additional skills. So yes, I think there's going to be some questions to answer, but I'm confident in collaboration, in cooperation, we can come up with those answers. Thank you, Fred.
Guy, did you want to add any comments?
I think as an ex-seafarer, you know, it's been an amazing industry. There's so many opportunities out there, and I really wouldn't want any message to young people that seafaring shouldn't be considered as a result of all of this, and we've got to work doubly hard to make sure we get that throughput of young people coming into our industry. What's slightly worrying at the moment is the interruption to maritime training that's taking place around the world, and I think that's going to affect the future pipeline, at least on a temporary basis. So I agree with all the speakers here. We've got to collaborate, work together to address these problems going forward. Seafaring, we still need seafarers. We'll need seafarers for the foreseeable future. Maybe their roles will change slightly as we move to more automation and digitalisation, other type of things, but certainly we've got to continue to promote this industry as an attractive one for young people.
Thank you very much, Guy. We're just about at the end of our time here, so I know that we did have some additional questions. If possible, we'll try to provide some written answers to those, but I think we captured most of the main topics in the Q&A. What I'd like to do now is give each speaker 30 seconds to give us your final thoughts, and I'll go in reverse order this time. Niels.
Thank you very much. Well, I can only echo what I said in my last slide. Let us do the right thing. And also governments, do the right thing, even if that takes unprecedented but pragmatic actions. We really need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Niels. Paolo?
What I wish to say, number one, thank you guys for the invitation, especially for the Stella Maris Network. I just wish this pandemic will be really faced with the proper measures, right attitude, where there will be no losers, but everybody is a winner.
Thank you very much, Paolo. Steve?
So just to thank everyone for the opportunity, and I think for us in the ITF, we feel we're getting to the crisis point. So it's great to be on a very responsible panel like this, talking to responsible people. Our advice is to those ship owners or to those registers, no shortcuts. Respect the law, the maritime law, and governments, you must help us get those planes into the air, and you must make sure the seafarers are ready to be deployed. It's utterly critical you prioritise that. I think if we don't move the seafarers soon, we will all struggle to manage the consequences. So a very positive panel, but it's the serious work's got to be, seafarers have got to see more seafarers come in and get off the ships. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And finally, Guy?
I think it's a plea to everybody who's on this webinar now. This really is a call to action. We need all hands on deck now to send an SOS to governments. It's that serious. So contact your governments, contact your representative, write letters to newspapers. Each and every single one of us who are on this call, who's watching this, does something positive. We can help solve this problem, this crisis, and get our seafarers home and get their release out to them. So that's why my plea to everyone is on this call. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Guy. We've had a number of people ask whether the recording of this will be posted, and the answer to that question is yes. We will post this either on our website or on our YouTube channel, or perhaps both. We'll get with our technical people, but as the previous speakers mentioned, there were a lot of really good thoughts brought out in this panel today. I would say this, quite frankly, has been one of the more hard-hitting panels that I've participated in. And if I could quote Steve Cotton in his remarks, the world needs shipping and shipping needs seafarers. The Day of the Seafarer is about honoring seafarers, and the best way to honor seafarers at this moment in history is to take action, honor them by getting them home, honor them by getting them to their ships so they can work. Thank you all for your attendance today. I appreciate, thanks to all the speakers for taking time, and actually taking double time since we had to invite you back. And let's remember seafarers, and let's get to work and get them home. Thank you very much, everyone.